Of Sri Lanka.
Mr. President, Sri Lanka urges that the spirit of this initiative be recognized by all in this House. The spirit of the initiative which Sri Lanka is supporting is not directed against the office of the High Commissioner. It is intended to strengthen the office by strengthening its credibility. It is intended to enhance the independence of the office of the High Commissioner. Mr. President, we need an office which will be a lighthouse of human rights, a lighthouse whose beam plays across the horizon, back and forth. We do not need an office which is opaque or indecipherable, standing above us like Kafka's castle. This is why Sri Lanka supports the effort to make the office more authentically representative of regions and peoples. We believe that in so broad-basing the office, in making it a more accurate mirror of the planet, it will be able to discharge its functions far more effectively, and it will find itself a more greatly empowered and authentically independent institution. Not independent of some, but dependent on others, but independent of all, above the fray, and recognized as such universally. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Sri Lanka will support the text because we do not agree with the criticism that much of the substance belongs elsewhere. Mr. President, the Human Rights Council must not give up the responsibility to examine human rights in a holistic manner. This includes discussing the roots and the context in which violations of human rights takes place. Mr. President, we also know the famous divide between socio-economic and cultural rights on the one hand and political rights on the other. This is sometimes referred to as the distinction between individual rights and collective rights. We believe that this text attempts to bridge this divide, and it is a bridging exercise that is vitally necessary, bringing together the concerns of individuals and collectives, of North and South. For this reason, Mr. President, Sri Lanka shall vote yes if this comes up for a vote. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Sri Lanka will support the text because we do not agree with the criticism that much of the substance belongs elsewhere. Mr. President, the Human Rights Council must not give up the responsibility to examine human rights in a holistic manner. This includes discussing the roots and the context in which violations of human rights takes place. Mr. President, we also know the famous divide between socio-economic and cultural rights on the one hand and political rights on the other. This is sometimes referred to as the distinction between individual rights and collective rights. We believe that this text attempts to bridge this divide, and it is a bridging exercise that is vitally necessary, bringing together the concerns of individuals and collectives, of North and South. For this reason, Mr. President, Sri Lanka shall vote yes if this comes up for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would begin by expressing our commiserations to the people of Lebanon and the continuing impact of terrorism there in Iraq, yesterday in Algeria, perhaps indicates the importance of the work of Special Rapporteur Martin Scheinin. But before I refer to that, I would like, on behalf of Sri Lanka, to associate ourselves with the comments of other delegates, in particular from Asia and most recently the Philippines, about the difficulties of reports that perhaps have emerged from insufficient dialogue. And I think it is particularly important for special rapporteurs to engage in continuing dialogue and get the views of countries before producing what might sometimes seem ex cathedra pronouncements. However, with regard to Mr. Scheinin's report, we do welcome the principles that he has enunciated. Some of the responses of countries to which he refers struck a chord with Sri Lanka, which has perhaps suffered more proportionately in terms of loss of life and property from terrorism. And we did appreciate the need for certain measures, but we would affirm Mr. Scheinin's point that these have to be in terms of recognizing the importance of human rights, and in particular of guarding against any abuse, and in particular imposing perhaps unfair restrictions on whole populations. Having said that, I would like in particular to refer to a couple of paragraphs in Mr. Scheinin's report and suggest that perhaps some better coordination might be appropriate in dealing with some of the side effects of terrorism and the importance of human rights. In paragraph 56, he talks about the importance of education, and I think this is particularly appropriate, but we in Sri Lanka have suffered from problems with regard to rehabilitation of former combatants in situations in which a UN agency, UNICEF, has insisted on returning them to areas which he specifically warns against, where they have been reabsorbed by the Tigers through forced conscription. And I think it is important for the United Nations perhaps to work out a more coherent response to the increasing dangers of terrorism. I would like also to refer to his paragraph 45, in which he talks of the problems of restricting funding to terrorist organizations. And he refers here to an organization known as the Tamil Rehabilitation Organization, because that organization has helped victims in areas where the population is mainly Tamil. And I'm afraid that Mr. Scheinin, in his references, is talking about a document issued in 2005. And I think this is simply not good enough for a special rapporteur, because the TRO, as I believe many colleagues in this room know, is under prosecution in a number of countries for direct funding for the procurement of weapons. Sri Lanka is particularly grateful to countries such as France, the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, and most recently Denmark, for pursuing prosecutions in this respect. And in recent discussions with the European Union Commissioner, Commissioner Frattini, he expressed regret that other countries in the EU had not been quite as consistent and he hoped that action would be taken. But it is then ironic to find in a UN document perhaps justification for such organizations, even though since 2005, which is the date the Special Rapporteur refers to, the TRO might have seemed respectable. So I would urge that the UN is perhaps more thorough before it refers in passing, as it were, to such organizations. And when he talks about the law of December 2006, I think he should perhaps have investigated it more closely and seen that the Sri Lankan government does encourage aid and assistance, but wants absolute zero tolerance of funding for terrorism. Thank you.